Good day, and thank you for watching Black Agenda Report. I'm Margaret Kimberly. Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and read blackagendareport.com. Our guest this week is attorney Jaribu Hill. She is executive director of the Mississippi Workers Center for Human Rights in Greenville, Mississippi. She joins us from Greenville to discuss the police killing of Cohen Wiley, a one-year-old Black child shot by police in the city of Senatobia on June 14, 2026, in the parking lot of a Walmart store. There is an investigation ongoing by the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, but there has been no public information forthcoming, and Mississippi's Legislative Black Caucus is demanding answers. Jaribu Hill will discuss this case and the conditions Black people live with in Mississippi and how they are different and not different from the lives of Black people around the country. Thank you so much for joining me, Jaribu.
Thank you so much for having me, Margaret. It's always a pleasure to be on the platform, the Black Agenda Report platform, where you can get Black truth, where you can get true information, and you can also understand the complexities of what we're dealing with. Thank you for your articles, your interviews and videos, and everything that Black Agenda Report means to us in our community. And I'm so glad to be back.
2 months ago, Cohen Wiley was shot by police in a car with his mother and another lady. They had left a Walmart store. There was a call about a theft, shoplifting. That is the story we're told. And the police chased them out of the store, allegedly over stolen Pampers, which were not stolen. She made her purchases. And they shot into the car, killed a little boy. They have their version of events. It's the usual police version of events. The car was coming towards them. The cops were going to die. They had to shoot. But eyewitness accounts, of course, are quite different. So those are the details. But tell us your take on the entire incident and what this means for Black people in Mississippi and everywhere.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate your summary because the summary that you provide is actually the truth of the matter. There's been a lot on Facebook and social media that's been distorting the truth, even blaming the mother and accusing the mother of using the baby as a shield. And some colonized minded individuals that look like you and me, Margaret, unfortunately are part of that narrative, that false fake news narrative. But the truth of the matter is that it was beyond excessive force. It was murder under the color of law. It was a child this time. And this is why it is so hard for all of us to even reconcile or deal with the fact that a child who was not even able to see his second birthday was murdered while sleeping or sitting in his mother's arms. She saw him take his first breath when he was born and his last breath when he died. That is her story. That's the quote directly from the mother. And it's so gut-wrenching to know that this has happened and that it continues to happen. Police murders continue to happen. Deaths under the color of law are not new. They are not regional. They are national within the empire and global within the world. Anti-Blackness across the world. And we localize it here in Mississippi for this moment because of baby Cohen Wiley. Baby Cohen, yes, Cartier Wiley. I want to make sure I get his name correct. And we localize it because, once again, Mississippi, which back in the day, even after slavery, led in terms of the number of lynchings that were occurring even after slavery. And many people try to mince words and try to say what a lynching is and what it's not. Someone even said to me, well, he was shot, he wasn't hung. A race killing is a lynching. Whether it's by the gun, the rope, or a barbecue, it is still a lynching. And so we are deeply disturbed about the things that you just said, where there is no public information. There has never even been a press conference called by the officials, by the authorities, by the district attorney's office, by the police department. No official press conference to announce to the community what is happening with the investigation, the so-called investigation. The cop that killed this baby is home on leave with pay. And you know what that means. You know, leave with pay means vacation. Leave with pay means you can sit up and watch your favorite football game or your basketball game, or go out with your boys and come back and have a beer and kick back and not worry about anything, least of all worry about a paycheck while you have actually murdered a child. And it was murder. It was absolutely murder. It was reckless disregard for human life. And the way that it happened so many times, where people shield and protect law enforcement. And we're seeing that lining up in full swing right now. We're also seeing the class struggle play out, where people have decided which poster child are we going to lift up? Which murder are we going to lift up? Which murder can we live with? Which one can we really, no justification at all? We're on the side of law enforcement. There must have been something that the parent must have done something wrong. The baby must have done something wrong, because why would the police kill a baby? But then in the other case, well, this young man went missing. And so, of course, that's something we've got to lift up. He was a football star. He was a college student. He was from a middle-class family. So we see where the Cohen Wiley case has not been lifted up in the latest round of news coverage. There's very little coverage, even from those who purport to represent the family. There is very little coverage of this case and very little going on in terms of information. Now, there is a bright light. There's a brand new organization that was formed with local people, and that's where we go. We go to local people for answers. We go to local people for solidarity and unity and support, to show the family and the relatives and the people in the community that they are not alone. We go directly to those who are legitimately present in the community, not to those who parachute in or helicopter in, but those who actually are in the community. So there's a group called Senatobia Coalition for Accountability and Transparency, called SCAT. And there's a young man named Patrick Alexander who has been intricately involved in trying to uncover the truth. He has made several appearances before City Council, challenging the Board of Aldermen, the Board of Alderpersons, to force them to look at this case, to force them to look at a police department that historically, and people need to understand the history of Senatobia's police department. Senatobia apparently gets the dregs, gets all those recycled folks who have clouds hanging over them. They get to come to Senatobia and work. No different with this guy, Hunter Foster, who actually had a cloud hanging over him in another county, DeSoto County, had 2 or 3 clouds hanging over him, including a sexual harassment complaint, as well as some excessive force charges. So we see this playing out, where these dregs of humanity get to come to various communities and reinforce and reestablish where the police state might have looked like it was going away for a minute, but actually galvanizing and shoring up the police state that we see right now in our communities. So what we're disturbed about, and I'll put the lawyer hat on for a minute. What I'm disturbed about as an advocate who practices law in federal court, who has done work around police misconduct, around police killings, who has done work around murders under the color of law, that nothing, absolutely nothing has been filed. We know that there was negligence on the part of Walmart, who made the call that led to the cops coming to the parking lot, led to the cops chasing down these 2 women with the baby, led to the cops shooting in the car and killing the baby. Yet nothing, no charges have been filed. As I said earlier, the killer is at home on paid leave. We also see that there has been no real charge or no real incrimination or recrimination against Walmart for not just the baby killing, but Walmart across the country is a hostile place for people to go shopping. We remember Beaver Creek, Ohio, near where I went to school. I went to Central State University in Xenia, in Wilberforce, Ohio, near Xenia, but Beaver Creek is right near Xenia, Ohio, in Greene County, in Ohio near Dayton. A man was in the store buying a BB gun for his child, I think a Christmas present, and was shot down and killed in the Walmart. So we just saw a picture of people being wrestled, a 13-year-old boy being wrestled to the ground in Walmart for selling roses outside the store. So Walmart is a place of hostility. It's a place of exploitation. It's one of the worst employers in the country. And we know that there are people who are reluctant to come out against Walmart because they might be getting some of that blood money. We know that for sure. There are organizations that purport to represent our people, that purport to stand with our people, who actually take money from Walmart. And perhaps that's the reason why they have not come out in total outrage about the killing of this baby in the Walmart parking lot, where Black lives are always under siege, by the way, including Black workers who make grindingly low wages and whose dignity is challenged every day just to go to work. So it's no surprise that it would happen in Walmart's sphere, because Walmart is a very hostile place for Black and brown people, and I'll say poor white people too, but they just don't know it. So for us, it is very shocking that nothing formal has happened. You know yourself, when you watch Law and Order or you watch any of these shows on television, the first thing you see are the cops and the police chief and the commissioner coming to the podium and reassuring the public that there's going to be an investigation. Well, nothing like that happened in the case of baby Cohen Wiley.
You know, you mentioned cop shows on TV. I call them propaganda. That's why we have to watch these things with a discerning eye. But you mentioned a couple of things. You used the term color of law. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So murders under the color of law are committed by state actors, law enforcement, soldiers, militia, National Guard, anyone acting under the authority of the empire that commits these murders. We call them murders under the color of law because quite often they are sanctioned within the shrine of the legal system. They're sanctioned under the statutes. They're sanctioned. Even excessive force has known to be sanctioned where they have concluded that the officer's life was in danger. So you look at the Eleanor Bumper case, and I'm so glad you talked about how these cases are across the world, across the country, across the empire. It's not just Mississippi. Yes, Mississippi is what Nina Simone said it was, but it also, there are horrific examples everywhere. And one that sticks out so close in my mind, because we're coming up on her anniversary again in October, is Eleanor Bumpers, the 67-year-old grandmother who was murdered under the color of law, absolutely murdered under the color of law in outside jurisdiction. Why do I say that? Who came to kill, who came to evict Eleanor Bumpers? The police. But in New York, we know that the police do not evict. The marshals evict. U.S. Marshals come to evict, not the police officers. So they were outside their jurisdiction. They were under the color of law when they murdered this Black woman in cold blood. And so that was back in the 80s, the late 80s, that we saw that happening. We saw where Sean Bell was just trying to have a bachelor party and was shot and murdered and killed in the van on his way to his bachelor party the night before his wedding. We see where 71 years ago, we're still talking about, and you can see behind me the poster of the beautiful child Emmett and his beautiful mother. We're celebrating now or remembering him again 71 years later. And unfortunately and tragically, yes, no, that was not a killing under the color of law, but it certainly was a murder sanctioned under the color of law, because the law enforcement officers did everything they could to bury the truth, including trying to bury the body. But the mother was courageous enough to stop it and force the issue of her baby being brought back to Chicago and the casket being opened. So nationwide, empire-wide, we see these killings, and under the color of law means that they got away with it. And how they got away with it is because the laws were designed to protect and serve the empire, to protect property, to protect the rich, to protect the powerful, and not the vulnerable and not the victims. So under the color of law means that you did not commit a crime when you killed that Black baby. And that's what they're telling the cops.
You know, that's you raised the issue. You raised several issues. You mentioned Nolan Wells, who was also a young man killed, died under very mysterious, to say the least, circumstances. You mentioned that the police who killed the officer who killed Cohen Wiley is home on vacation. That happens all the time. We all remember Eric Garner here in New York,
Yes.
whose last words were "I can't breathe." The officer who killed him actually made more money. He was not fired, and for some years after, every time he went to court, he earned overtime. He made more money after he killed Eric Garner.
That's right.
So these are the things we have to talk about. That these people have. Is it qualified immunity? Is that the term?
Qualified immunity and sovereign immunity, deadly for us, because what happens is if they are in their official capacities, many times anything that they do is excused and waived. And so you go to court and you fight, you work with the legislators to try to overturn, and under state law, you try to overturn these immunity protections, but we've not been successful in doing that because of states' rights, because ultimately the racial hostility, the anti-Blackness, the white supremacy that we still see in the system, that we still see in the empire, is shored up by these laws. The Black codes back in the day, the slave codes. We know that our people were always under the gun, always running away from terror, running from one region to the next. That's why we can't confine it, we can't localize it to the South, because if you look at how our people had to flee from the Southern region because of white terror, because of terror, we had to flee. And where did we flee to? The Midwest, to Chicago, where you have the largest number of Black people who are indigenous to Mississippi actually living in Chicago, Illinois. So we have seen over and over again. And when you mentioned what happened with the Eric Garner murderer, how he was not only was he benefiting all the time from the crime he committed, but look at Eleanor Bumpur's case. We saw the cop that killed Eleanor Bumpurs was promoted and ended up being some kind of official photographer for the police department. And when on one of the funeral marches, we actually saw this cop taking pictures of the marchers and the protesters. And of course, we saw Giuliani leading a march across the street saying, protect our cops, support our police, while we were marching against the murder of this Black woman. But the cop was decorated. The cop was promoted after killing this Black woman. And we know that happens over and over again. And we know that Carolyn Bryant, and I'll call her that because I don't want people to be confused, Carolyn Bryant, who was 21 years old when she fingered Emmett Till for death. She knew that her husband was a racist. She knew her brother-in-law was a racist, and still she told them things to fan the flames and whip them up into a racist frenzy. They killed that kid. They abducted that kid in the middle of the night, took him out. He never saw his mother again, and they never served any time. In fact, they admitted that they were acquitted, and then they did an interview with Look magazine and got paid for doing the interview, $4,000. Yes, they did. So these murderers continue to be decorated. They continue to be celebrated. And Carolyn Bryant went to her grave at 88 years old, never having faced the music, never having ever faced the consequences for what she did. And we know that was because of cowards who were in authority, cowards who were in Black skin. The district attorney continued to stall and protect her while she continued to live out her life. He refused, even after the warrant was found, even after the probable cause statement was found, naming her, along with the two killers, naming her in the abduction and charging her with the abduction that led to the lynching of Emmett Till. We know that she had cookouts. She did barbecues at her home in North Carolina, where people came and got plates of food and fellowshipped with this killer. So we see where the killers are often benefiting after they have committed these horrific crimes. The woman who thought that she was in her apartment, but she was in Bottom John's apartment, and ends up getting 10 years, but yet Carmelo Anthony gets 35 years. And clearly there was evidence that he was being bullied and harassed and taunted by the person he ended up unfortunately killing. So we see the double standard over and over again. And what I would caution people every time, what I would caution us is how we use social media, how we rush to judgment right away and assume that the cops must be right and that the person must have done something wrong. We do that with people who are incarcerated, who are caged. We assume that everyone who's caged has done something wrong, when many times they might not have been able to afford an attorney, or they might have had to use a public defender who had $700 budget to work with. So we see the injustices, and yet those who are supposed to be protecting us, those who have the platforms that we often don't have access to, are not lifting up cases like the baby Cohen case. That's why Black Agenda Report is so significant and so important. You are the first journalist to contact me and ask me for an interview on baby Cohen. The first.
You know,
last week to talk about Nolan Wells, and I brought in on that interview, I brought in baby Cohen. And the interviewer was Barbara Arnwine, and she appreciated it and allowed me to go further, to not just talk about Nolan Wells, but to talk about baby Cohen. But actually, Black Agenda Report is the only outlet, is the only platform that has asked me to speak specifically and solely on Cohen Wiley, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jaribu. I wanted to mention, you mentioned Giuliani, but there was he was very high ranking in the NYPD. His name was John Chell, a killer cop under Eric Adams, New York's second Black mayor. He shot a Black man. There was no investigation of that shooting, and he climbed the ladder in the police department and got a very big promotion under Eric Adams. There's so many injustices, but I want to point out that every day police kill 3 to 4 people in this country. One of those people will be Black, but every single day, people are killed by the police. Now, sometimes we see Eric Garner gasping for breath. We saw George Floyd begging for his life. So sometimes we see it, and then there's outrage. There should be.
Right.
Well, in this case, there's outrage because the victim was a baby. But the same day that little Cohen Wiley was killed, 2 or 3 other people were killed by the police somewhere in the country. How do we raise this issue beyond outrage about the age of the victim or whether there is or isn't a video? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think it's important that you stated that, because it's true. Outside of the cameras, outside of the limelight, outside of the paparazzi syndrome or system, we know that there are many killings that are in the shadows, many killings that are not within our view, that we don't know about. But like you said, those statistics are horrifying. 1 out of 3. And so disproportionately, because we are less than 40% of the population, we are still a racial minority in this country, yet we are disproportionately caged, we're disproportionately murdered, we're disproportionately residing in systemic cyclical poverty, extreme poverty. And so all of these things that are heaped on top of the Black body, we see it constantly from state to state. We see it. And you know what else we see that we have to grapple with? It's so hard to grapple with it as a Black person who tries to understand the system. It's so hard for us as revolutionaries to understand the issue of Black betrayal, to understand that many times the people who sit in power, who could make the decision to put away these killers, to force them to come under scrutiny and be held accountable, there are Black people in authority who are protecting them. So right now in Senatobia, there are 2 Black alderpersons who sit there in every meeting whenever Patrick Alexander and the others come before them to bring up new issues concerning the murder of this baby and the horrific record of the police department. They refuse to take action. To this day, they refuse to take action, which also begs the question for me, if anybody who's talking about they represent the family, where are the filings? Why hasn't anything been filed against the police department when they have a track record of protecting police killers? Why is that? And we see it so often, even in our own race. We understand people who climb the ladder for their own benefit. And that's why class struggle is a horrible word. People don't want to hear about class anything in this country because the privileged elites, whatever color they come in, they don't want to talk about class. That's why the convention on socioeconomic and cultural rights, that's why it was never ratified in this country, because this country will never recognize class as a central cause of oppression, And so we see where the poster children are selected. We know that happened in the case of Rosa Parks, and we love Rosa. We love Rosa's legacy. But before Rosa, there was a 15-year-old Black girl named Claudette Colvin who was pregnant. And so that's a no-no, first of all. And her skin was dark. That's a no-no. So who do they go? They go and get someone else who's more presentable to them. And Rosa was not like that. She sat down because of it. They tried to use her in that way, but she refused to be used as a colorist. She refused to be used in that way. But that was how they decided they would not put the little girl who was the first one to be brave. They would not put her on a poster and say, Claudette Colvin got arrested because she refused to give up her seat. And this is what's happening now with baby Cohen. His parents are young, and someone even said, one of the attorneys even said, oh, they're not together, they're not married, and talked about how much GoFundMe money has been raised or not raised. Well, let me just say this out loud and clear as a people's lawyer who went to the same law schools, studied the same books, got the same sheepskin and license. I can tell you it does not take 30,000. It doesn't take 3,000 to file a lawsuit. Yes, along the way, you have to raise money to make sure you can do your discovery, to make sure that you prep your witnesses and get ready for trial. Yes, you do. But that comes from getting in the community and forming a people's defense fund. That's how you do it. That's how it was done back in the day with Angela.
So why do you think that has not happened?
Well, we have some suspicions. And my suspicion, I believe, will be out to be true, that because it's Walmart, there are issues with people wanting to sit back and try to settle with Walmart because Walmart is so very rich. Walmart is the richest retailer. Every family member in Walmart is a multimillionaire. Okay, all the blood relatives are multimillionaires. So there is reluctance to even call out Walmart, let alone sue them. And then the other thing is it's a cop. The reluctance to take on the authorities. This is what we're seeing. So the backroom deals may be being made now as we speak. I don't know. I hope not. And I said this at a town hall meeting. I hope that back deals are not being made where you come out of the back room and you throw these crumbs in the faces of people who lost their baby. My goodness. You throw these crumbs at them and advise them to settle. Need to file lawsuits against the culprits. Walmart and the cops need to be sued. Play it out in court. Play it out in the streets. Educate the people about what's going on. Boycott. We were talking about why are people still going to Walmart in Senatobia? If you're Black, you don't need to go to that Walmart. I don't want you to go to any Walmart, but you definitely need to go to the Walmart where the baby was killed. Okay. And we know back in the day when Emmett Till was lynched and those two boys stood trial and were acquitted. After that trial, Black folks who were the main customers, and we didn't even know this, Black folks were the main customers at Bryant grocery store. What did they do? They stopped patronizing that store and the Bryants had to go out of business. Now that is what we're talking about. We're talking about what our ancestors told us. Don't pump gas where you can't eat. Don't buy where they kill Black children. Don't buy where murderers get off scot-free and then go back and stand before you at the cash register and collect your money. Understand that we are at war. We are at war, and these folks can be defeated if we weren't so caught up in the boogeyman syndrome and thought there's nothing we can do about a Trump. There's nothing we can do about a Walmart. There's nothing we can do about a police. There is always a history and a timeline regarding resistance. And you can, in fact, bring these people low. You can bring them, as we say here in the South, you can bring them low. They can be brought low, no question about that. But what do? You got to say in your mind, you got to decolonize, and you got to say to yourself, okay, I'm not going in there. I'm not buying where a baby was shot and the cop still has not even been questioned, still is not even, and if he's been questioned, he answered the questions to their liking and he's on leave with pay. He's not fired from his job even, okay, for killing a baby. You can do way less and get charged with, I mean, my goodness, we've got Antar Lumumba facing 5 years for bribery. But you have a cop at home, sitting at home on paid leave after killing a baby. So we have got to understand the double standard. We've got to understand how the empire plays out. And we've got to understand that we must at all times be standing up strong against these murders under the color of law. We've got to stand up strong against murders under the color of law and against sanctioned mob murders that are protected by the color of law. So it's two streams here that we're talking about. We're talking about those who actually wear the uniform or the suit and the badge and have the issue gun, right? And we're also talking about those who feel that they can kill, like James C. Anderson, who was murdered in Jackson, Mississippi, just a few years ago by a white mob who were sitting watching television in Pearl, Mississippi, Rankin County, one of the worst counties for Black folks, sitting watching TV and decide, let's go kill a nigga. They go across the bridge. James C. Anderson's coming out of a pub or a tavern, and they run him down with their car, 2 vehicles, mow him down. 7 of them were brought to justice for deciding that they were going to kill a Black man. They used the word. They were going to kill a nigga, and that's what they did. And James C. Anderson was a auto worker at Nissan Auto Plant and was murdered for no reason at all except for sport. So we see these killings across the country, and we can't just localize it. Yes, we have to shine a light on Mississippi for back in the day and today, but we also have to shine a light on all of the places where murders are happening right now, where lynchings are occurring in workplaces, where nooses are being displayed in workplaces, where the Klan is recruiting members in workplaces right now as we speak. We know when we sued the shipyard years ago, there was a poster that said, join your local Klan chapter. Don't worry, there are 5 of them. And that was a poster up in the shipyard, which is the largest employer in the state of Mississippi. That was a graffiti sign in the shipyard. So we know what we're dealing with, but the question is, who do we have on our side when we are fighting these battles? We used to be able to turn to certain institutions, the Black church, for example. We used to be able to turn to national organizations, but yet these organizations and institutions have been quiet, have been silent on the issue of baby Cohen. And I feel like baby Cohen is the modern day expression of Emmett Till. Why do I say that? Because it was the same thing back in the day. People were trying to say, oh, well, if he whistled at a white woman, if he disrespected a white woman, what are you saying? Decolonize your mind. And someone said to me, even if she drove a truck up and stole every pamper that was in the store and started putting them on her body, that's no justification for the murder that occurred.
Well, Jaribu, there's something else before my final question. It seemed to me, from what I know about police procedure, shooting into a car is dangerous to bystanders, dangerous to the police. Yes. They did not follow the most basic procedures, but we see the color of law was preeminent, not common sense, not the rule book. Not anything else.
Margaret, you're in New York City. That's where the laws first started to be put in place, where you can't run in a crowd. Even if you're chasing a suspect, you can't start shooting because you're going to kill, because they did kill bystanders, innocent bystanders.
Right.
Those laws are in place, but they don't follow them. And apparently, if you don't follow them, you get paid leave. if you break the law.
One more question, Jaribu, just in like a minute. The Mississippi Black Legislative Caucus has made a public statement. Tell us about that in a minute, if you can.
First of all, I see this as one of the fish and loaves of bread miracles. Okay, if you were ever raised in the church, you know the parable about the miracle, how he fed all these people with just a couple of fish and 5 loaves of bread. I see this as a miracle moment where the Legislative Black Caucus is standing up tall through Kabir, who is the chairman. They have taken on this issue and are demanding answers. SCAT, the organization that I mentioned earlier, is part of the leadership, part of the urging for this to happen, and the community itself and the pressure that the community is placing on our elected officials didn't have to be as severe with this particular group of legislators. So I'm very proud that they are standing up. I'm standing by them. I'm looking forward to see what answers they're able to uncover. I believe that there is more information that we need to get. I believe that we deserved an official press conference. We deserved a public convening, a public information session from the officials, accountability. He needs to be on unpaid leave, pending an investigation, pending termination. Why are these things not happening now? And on the side of civil work, where lawyers are involved, and since I am a lawyer, I'm in that community, and I can say to my colleagues out loud, whoever you are who are claiming to represent this family, when are you going to file something? When are you going to file something? Because the only thing they understand is when you shake and rattle the pocketbook. That's the only thing they understand. And we're not talking about families being made whole because of money. We know we're in a capitalist society and currency is all people understand. But the justice comes in accountability. The justice comes in understanding that there needs to be a totally new order of the day. There needs to be a totally new system where there is no police state, where there is no sanctioning of, this type of violence under the color of law. You talk about gang violence, you round up young Black men and young brown men, and you put them away forever because of gang violence, but you let killer cops off with paid leave. How is that? That's a double standard. If you're gonna prosecute one set of killers, what about the main killers who shore up the empire, who shore up state power, who shore up those who should be in prison right now? Who are walking.
But, in saying that, I know you answered your own question. They work on behalf of the state, that's why they have impunity. Well, Jaribu, thank you so much. We could go on and on, but we are out of time, and I thank you so much for coming on to discuss this case. And I would love to have you back because there's so much that you can share with our audience. Thank you so much, Jaribu Hill.
At Schrock in December. We'll talk more about that later.
Sure, we will. Jaribu Hill in Greenville, Mississippi, discussing the police killing of Cohen Wiley. Thank you so much.